Welcome to 5 Minute Apologetics. On today's episode, we are looking at the question, faith in a time of plague. As many of you, or all of you I'm sure know, there is a new virus sweeping the world, the coronavirus, COVID-19, and it has brought the world to a virtual standstill. And this has brought many challenges with it. Many people are starting to ask questions. Why would God let this happen? What does this mean? Are we in the end times? All these things are coming to the mind of Christians and non-Christians around the world. People are fearful and anxious. And what I want to look at is how should we respond as the church? I believe we need a two-pronged approach to this issue. One that takes the questions of the mind seriously, but also attempts to speak to the cries of the heart. First, we must have a proper framework for understanding what we call natural evil. This is things like natural disasters, tornadoes, and yes, viruses. It's part of our biblical world view. Now, this is important because when people ask the question, why would God let this happen? This is a question about natural evil. And we don't have to be specific about the coronavirus. There have been many worse things on this world, so we need to answer the question broadly. Now, let's look at this. Did God create viruses? And actually the answer is yes, he did create viruses. In fact, most viruses are extremely beneficial. Our stomachs right now are full of viruses. They play a very important role in helping regulate bacteria. The ocean, for example, is full of viruses. We need these things. But why the bad viruses? Well, originally we know that God created everything and he said in Genesis that it was very good. However, something happened in the world that caused the relationship between creature and creation to be broken. It is now fallen into a state of dysfunction. We call this the fall of man, the entrance of sin into the world. Things are cursed and things are decaying. This means that some of the checks and balances that were probably originally in place in these biological systems have malfunctioned, allowing things to go wrong. And this could, for example, say allow a beneficial virus to become a dangerous virus. And this seems to be what the Bible implies. In the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 22, it says, For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers together under the curse. So you get this image that the whole creation is fallen into a state of dysfunction in many ways. And this is how we explain natural evil. It is the creation fall model. And it teaches us not only to explain these things, but also to understand natural evil and also to expect natural evil in this world. But this is where the Christian worldview speaks. You see, it doesn't just leave us there with an explanation. It goes further and it offers us hope of a future restoration and also present comfort through times of suffering. So this brings us to the question, knowing this, having this understanding, this creation fall model, how should Christians then respond? This is not the first time that something like this has happened in history. In the 19th century, in 1866, Charles Spurgeon, the great preacher, he lived through a cholera epidemic that hit the East End of London at that time and killed thousands of people. And again, Spurgeon preached a sermon called The Voice of Cholera. And in this sermon, he praises the advances in cleanliness and medicine. He also criticizes those who are without compassion and argue that we just need to let the virus run its course. He also speaks against those who just consider it to be a natural thing. They don't even put God in the picture. Spurgeon uses this opportunity as a time to call the nation to national repentance. And that again is a good model for the church. But then most interestingly, Charles Spurgeon in his sermon on cholera, he answered the question about why does God allow this to happen? And he said this, now listen to this quote, "If you ask me what I think to be the design, I believe it to be this: to waken up our indifferent population, to make them remember that there is a God, to render them susceptible of the influences of the gospel, to drive them to the house of prayer, to influence their minds to receive the word, and moreover to startle Christians into energy and earnestness that they may work while it is called day." What an amazing attitude that Charles Spurgeon had, and I believe that is the attitude that we should have as the church here today. This is crucial. Times like this turn people's minds towards God, and they always have. Hidden away in the Loire Valley in western France is a chateau, and in this chateau is a treasure, the largest medieval tapestry in the world, and it is called the Apocalypse Tapestry, and it features panels from every single book of Revelation, and it was written shortly after the time of the plague that decimated Europe. Dr. Natasha O'Hare, who has studied this tapestry and written a book about art and the book of Revelation, she made this fascinating observation. She said that people turned to Revelation in times of trial because they are attracted to its determinative worldview and its black and white certainty. People are attracted to Revelation in times of trial, and the art that we see across the world is usually created from the book of Revelation after a great upheaval on this world, because people's minds are once again turned to God. And then she further comments, the difference between then and now is that then they had an unshakable belief in the New Jerusalem. It was a happy ending in a way. For them, it was serene. And this is the message of the book of Revelation. And I believe that this is once again an opportunity for the church to once again persuade people that the worldview presented in the Bible is true. What we read about in Revelation will happen, and it does offer us comfort and hope, and it turns our minds towards heavenly things. This crisis may well be the opportunity, the window that we need in order to do this. Let me end by reading you a quote from C.S. Lewis that I believe is fitting here. He said that God whispers to us in our pleasures. He speaks to us in our conscience, but shouts to us in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Now is the time. Let's rise up. Thanks for listening.